আচ্ছা, এই যে ডক্ট্রিন অফ ল্যাপসটা এটা হলো Lord Dalhousie, the Governor General of India, annexed many Indian states to the company using doctrine of lapse. According to this doctrine, এটার কি? If an Indian ruler died without a male heir, his kingdom would lapse, that is, it would come under company's territory in India. By other, when the ruler of Jhansi died in 1853, leaving no natural heir, he holo widowed Rani was pensioned. pensioned, widowed Rani ke pension dite holo, widowed Rani was pensioned, and their adopted son Anand Rao was not recognized as a lawful successor to the throne. Other prominent states which were annexed by applying this doctrine of lapse were Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur. The doctrine of lapse also applied to take away the titles and pensions of the rulers of some states. এটা এই ডক্ট্রিন অফ ল্যাপসটা হচ্ছে ওয়ান অফ দ্য রিজনস অফ মানে কজেস ফর দ্য ফার্স্ট ওয়ার অফ ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্স। Doctrine of lapse একটা reason, disrespect shown to Bahadur Shah. Bahadur Shah Zafar, the Mughal ruler, was under the protection of the company and received pension from the British. The name of Mughal king, of this Mughal king, and the name of Bahadur Shah Zafar was removed from the coins minted by the company. আর কি করা হলো? Dalhousie, Lord Dalhousie announced that successors of Bahadur Shah Zafar would not be permitted to use the Red Fort as their palace. They were required to shift to a place near Qutub Minar. Dalhousie announced করলো যে সাকসেসার্স অফ বাহাদুর শাহ জাফর কিন্তু রেড ফোর্ট ব্যবহার করতে পারবে না প্যালেস হিসেবে, তাদেরকে কোথাও একটা শিফট করে যেতে হবে কুতুব মিনারের কাছে। In 1856, Lord Canning announced that after the death of Bahadur Shah, his successors will not be allowed to use the imperial title with their names and will be known as mere princes. তো 1856 এ লর্ড ক্যানিং মানে ডিক্লেয়ার করলো যে বাহাদুর শাহ জাফরের সাকসেসররা কিন্তু ইম্পেরিয়াল টাইটেল ব্যবহার করবে না, তাদের মিয়ার প্রিন্স হিসেবে বাঁচতে হবে। আর নানা সাহিবকে কি ইল ট্রিটমেন্ট দিয়েছিল? Nana Sahib was the adopted son of Bajirao II, the last Peshwa. The British refused to grant Nana Sahib the pension they were paying to Bajirao II. Nana Sahib was forced to live at Kanpur, far away from his family seat. This was widely resented by the Maratha region. Nana Sahib had inherited wealth from former Peshwa, which he utilized in sending emissaries to different parts of the country for generating awareness among the Indians about the British policies. আর এই কুইন ভিক্টোরিয়াস প্রক্লেমেশন হচ্ছে কনসিকুয়েন্সেস অফ দ্য ফার্স্ট ওয়ার অফ ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্স। কুইন ভিক্টোরিয়াস প্রক্লেমেশন কি কি ছিল? The proclamation promised the government of India would follow a policy of non-intervention in social and religious matters of the Indians. কুইন ভিক্টোরিয়া প্রমিস করলো যে সোশিয়াল আর রিলিজিয়াস ম্যাটারে ইন্ডিয়ানদের তারা ইয়ে করবে না, কোনো কথা বলবে না, ট্রিট অল সাবজেক্টস লাইক ইন্ডিয়ানস এন্ড ইউরোপিয়ানস অ্যাজ ইকুয়াল, grant a general pardon to all those who had taken part in the war except those who were found guilty of murder of British subjects, promote works of public utility in India, do its best to advance the industries in India. এবার সোজা চলে যাই এই চ্যাপ্টারটাতে। Let us move on to this chapter, first phase of national movement. Early nationalists leaders কে কে ছিল? Early nationalist leaders দাদাভাই নওরোজি, সুরেন্দ্রনাথ ব্যানার্জি, গোপাল কৃষ্ণ গোখলে, ফিরোজ শাহ মেহতা and Madan Mohan Malviya. Dadabhai Naoroji, Surendranath Banerjee, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Firuz Shah Mehta, and Madan Mohan Malviya. The early nationalists, assertive nationalists, and Gandhian era এগুলো দিয়ে the history of Indian national movement can broadly be divided into three phases: early nationalist phase, assertive phase, and Gandhian era. Early nationalist phase কি কি আছে? The early nationalists included leaders from all parts of the country: W.C. Banerjee, Rash Bihari Ghosh, Surendranath Banerjee, R.C. Dutt from Bengal, Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Firoz Shah Mehta, Justice Ranade from Maharashtra and Gujarat, P.R. Naidu, Subramania Iyer, Anand Charlu from Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya from Uttar Pradesh, liberal Englishmen like Hume and Wedderburn. They were early nationalist leaders who led the Congress and national movement in its initial years, were staunch believers in open-minded and moderate policies. শুরুর দিকে যারা আর্লি ন্যাশনালিস্ট ছিল এরা staunch believer of open-minded and modern politics. They believed in the loyalty to the British crown. There were beliefs of early nationalists. The early nationalists had faith in the sense of justice, fair play, honesty, and integrity of the British. Early nationalists had faith in sense of justice, fair play, honesty, and integrity of the British. They believed that British rule had many benefits. For example, it aided in cleansing social ills like sati, untouchability, and child marriage. They believed that British rule had many benefits. For example, it aided in cleansing social ills like sati, untouchability, and child marriage. They were of the opinion that Britain would help Indians govern themselves according to Western standards. কি early nationalists belief ছিল faith in British justice, fair play, honesty, and integrity of the British. It was their hope that British would grant home rule to Indians. They relied on the solemn pledges made by the British government. They believed that British rule had many benefits. For example, it aided in cleansing social ills like sati, untouchability, and child marriage. They said that main obstacle in Indian progress was social and economic backwardness of the Indians and not British colonial rule. ওরা মনে করতো যে মেইন অবস্ট্যাকল ইন ইন্ডিয়ান প্রগ্রেস হচ্ছে সোশ্যাল ইকোনমিক ব্যাকওয়ার্ডনেস অফ দি ইন্ডিয়ান্স আর কখনো ব্রিটিশ কলোনিয়াল রুল নয়. They relied on constitutional and peaceful methods to achieve their aims. They believed in patience and reconciliation rather than in violence and confrontation. About demands of the early nationalists. The early nationalists wanted a larger share in the government of their country. They did not ask for immediate achievement of their goal, as they feared that government would suppress their activities. Therefore, we aimed at winning freedom through a gradual process. They made the following demands: abolition of Indian Council, expansion of legislative council and legislative assemblies, both at the center and at the provinces. Demands of early nationalists কি ছিল? The early nationalists wanted a larger share in the government of their country. It was a constitutional reform. They believed that India would move towards democratic self-government. However, they did not ask for immediate government for their goal, as they feared that government would suppress their activities. They made the following demands: কি কি? Abolition of Indian Council. increase in membership of the Indians by including some members by local bodies like Chamber of Commerce, universities in those councils and giving greater powers to them. They demanded Indian control over the public purse and raised slogan, no taxation without representation. Adequate representation of the Indians in Executive Council of the Viceroy. By the beginning of 28th century, they made a demand for Swaraj or self-government within the British Empire like self-governing colonies of Canada and Australia. কি বললো demands of the early nationalists কি ছিল? Early nationalists wanted a larger share in the government of their country. They believed that eventually India would move towards democratic self-government. Ora immediate achievement, they did not ask for immediate achievement of their goals, so they feared that government would suppress their activities. They therefore aimed at winning freedom through a gradual process. দিয়ে ওরা কয়েকটা ডিমান্ড করলো, abolition of Indian Council, expansion of legislative council and legislative assemblies, abolition of Indian Council, expansion of legislative assembly and legislative councils, both at the center and the provinces, increase in membership of the Indians, including some members elected by local bodies. Are they demanded Indian control over the public purse and raised the slogan no taxation without representation. Demanded Indian control over public purse and raised the slogan no taxation without representation. আর কি করলো? By the beginning of 20th century, they made a demand for Swaraj or self-government within the British Empire. কিছু কিছু সেল গভর্নিং কলোনিজ এর মতো কানাডা এন্ড অস্ট্রেলিয়া, adequate representation of the Indians in the executive council. এগুলো হচ্ছে কনস্টিটিউশনাল রিফর্মস আর্লি ন্যাশনালিস্টসরা চাইলো। এবার ইকোনমিক রিফর্মস কি থাকে? Availability of cheap credit to peasants through agricultural banks. An inquiry into India's growing poverty and famines. Reduction in expenditure on the army and money thus saved to be spent on welfare activities such as health and education. Reduction in land revenue and protection of peasants against unjust demands of the jamindars. তো কি economic reforms ও কি চাইলো early nationalistsরা? Reduction in land revenue and protection of peasants against unjust demands of the jamindars. An inquiry into India's growing poverty and famines. আর্মির পেছনে এত টাকা ব্যয় করা বন্ধ করতে বলল। রিডাকশন ইন এক্সপেন্ডিচার অন দি আর্মি অ্যান্ড মানি দাস সেভড টু বি স্পেন্ট অ্যান্ড যাতে টাকাটা ব্যবহার হয় অন ওয়েলফেয়ার অ্যাক্টিভিটিস সাচ অ্যাজ হেলথ অ্যান্ড এডুকেশন, development of banking, irrigation, medical and health facilities for the people. Industrial growth through trade protection, that means heavy tax should be imposed on imported goods and the government should give loans for the development of iron, coal, paper and sugar industries in India. Industrial growth through trade protection, that means heavy tax should be imposed on imported goods and the government should give loans for the development of iron, coal, paper, sugar industries, etc. Total abolition of salt law and the duty on sugar. Total abolition of salt tax. Total abolition of salt tax. Total abolition of salt tax. এটাও করলো। Next question, administrative demands কি ছিল? Repeal the Arms Act and License Act. Demand for Indianization of services through simultaneous Indian civil service examination, মানে civil service examination to be held both in England and India simultaneously. Demand for civil service examination being held both in England and in India. Indianization of services, এটাকে বলে demand for India Nization of services through simultaneous civil service examinations to be held both in India and England. Complete separation of the executive and judiciary. Increase in powers of the local bodies and reduction of official control over them. Repeal of Arms Act and License Act. Wider employment of Indians in higher grades of administrative service. Spread of primary education among the masses. Improvement of the police system to make it honest, efficient and popular. তাহলে অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেটিভ ডিমান্ড কি কি ছিল? ডিমান্ড ফর ইন্ডিয়ানাইজেশন অফ সার্ভিসেস থ্রু সাইমালটেনিয়াস Indian civil service examination in England and India. Complete separation of the executive and the judiciary. Increase in powers of local bodies, money municipal bodies, and reduction of official control over them. Repeal of Arms Act and License Act. Wider employment of the Indians in higher grades of administrative services. Spread of wider employment of Indians in the higher grades of administrative services. Spread of primary education among the masses. Next, defense of civil rights. এটা কি? The early nationalists defended civil rights whenever the British wanted to curtail them. The early nationalists demanded the following civil rights: removal of restrictions imposed by the British government on freedom of speech and freedom of press, abolition of Preventing Detention Act and restoration of individual liberties. এবার methods of early nationalists. কি কি মেথড ছিল? Early nationalists were practical and they wanted to win freedom by a gradual process. They did not attain high demands. They did not aim at high demands because they wanted to work on the lines. এগুলো বেকার methods of early nationalists. The early nationalists followed what is popularly known as constitutional agitation method. They believed in constitutional agitation within the legal framework. The methods are adopted by early nationalists কি কি ছিল? They held meetings where speeches were made and resolutions for popular demands were passed. They made use of press to criticize the government policies. They sent memorandums and petitions to government officials and the British Parliament. These petitions were carefully drafted with facts and arguments. Their main aim was to educate the Indian people. Second objective ki, first objective ki tale was to educate people in India, arouse national and political consciousness and create a united public opinion. They held meetings where speeches were made and resolutions for popular demands were passed. They made use of press to criticize government policies. They sent memorandums, petitions to the government officials and British Parliament. এবার সেকেন্ড অবজেক্টিভ কি ছিল? They made use of 3 P's: petitions, prayers and protests. They made use of 3 P's: petitions, prayers and protests. A British Committee of Indian National Congress was set up. They made use of petitions, prayers and protests. They sent petitions and requests of letters to British government to look into the problems of the Indians. Deputations of Indian leaders were sent to Britain. For example, Dadabhai Naoroji spent a major part of his life in Britain to create awareness among the British people and politicians about the plight of the Indians. প্রথম পয়েন্টটা হচ্ছে ইউজ অফ 3 P's: petitions, prayers, protests. সেকেন্ড পয়েন্টটা হচ্ছে ডেপুটেশন অফ ইন্ডিয়ান লিডার্স ওয়াজ সেন্ট টু ব্রিটেন. The political sent to Britain. For example, Dadabhai Naoroji spent a major part of his life in Britain to create awareness among the British people and politicians about the plight of the Indians. Next, achievements of the early nationalists. The early nationalists created national awakening among the people and they belonged to one country, India. The early nationalists created national awakening among the people that they belonged to one common country, India. The early nationalists trained people in politics by popularizing the ideas of democracy, civil liberties, secularism, and nationalism. The early nationalists did pioneering work by exposing the true nature of the British rule in India. By doing so, they weakened the foundation of British rule in India. The efforts of early nationalists led to the following reforms. কি কি এফার্ট অফ আর্লি ন্যাশনালিস্ট এই রিফর্মগুলো নিয়ে এলো? The appointment of a public service commission in 1886, a resolution of House of Commons for simultaneous exams for ICS in London and India, appointment of Wellby Commission on Indian Expenditure, আর Indian Councils Act of 1892. এগুলো হচ্ছে achievements of early nationalists. Indian Council, the early nationalists, the efforts of early nationalists led to the following reforms: appointment of Public Service Commission in 1886, resolution of House of Commons for simultaneous examination for ICS in London and India, appointment of Wellby Commission on Indian Expenditure, the Indian Councils Act of 1892. আর কি কি করেছিল এই early nationalists did pioneering work by exposing the true nature of the British rule in India. They made people realize that the economic content and character of British imperialism. By doing so, they weakened the foundations of British rule in India. এটা এক নাম্বার। দু নাম্বার হচ্ছে their political and economic programs established true that India must be ruled in the interest of the Indians. Our early nationalists created national awakening among the people and and that they belonged to one common country, India. About criticism of the early nationalists. এগুলো ছিল achievements এবার criticism. Methods, প্রথম হচ্ছে ডিমান্ড, তারপর মেথড, তারপর অ্যাচিভমেন্ট, তারপর ক্রিটিসিজম। মেথড কি ছিল? ওই যে কনস্টিটিউশনাল রিফর্মস, দে বিলিভড that India should move towards democratic self-government. Immediate, they did not ask for immediate government as they feared that government would suppress their activities. Therefore, they aimed at winning freedom through gradual process. They made the following demands: abolition of Indian Council, expansion of legislative council and legislative assemblies, increase in membership of the Indians, some members elected by the membership of the Indians. They demanded Indian control over the public parts and raised the slogan no taxation without representation. এইগুলো ওরা ডিমান্ড করলো। আর বাই দ্য বিগিনিং অফ 20th century they demanded for Swaraj or self-government within the British Empire like the self-governing colonies of Canada and Australia. এগুলো ছিল কনস্টিটিউশনাল রিফর্ম। ইকোনমিক রিফর্ম ছিল যে রিডাকশন ইন ল্যান্ড রেভিনিউ, রিডাকশন ইন এক্সপেন্ডিচার অন দি আর্মি, আর সেই মানিটা যেন সেভড হয় ফর স্পেন্ট অন ওয়েলফেয়ার অ্যাক্টিভিটিস সাচ এস হেলথ অ্যান্ড এডুকেশন, অ্যাভেলেবিলিটি অফ cheap credit to the peasants, an inquiry into India's growing poverty and famines, development of banking, irrigation, medical, and health facilities for the people, industrial growth through trade protection, এইসব টোটাল অ্যাবলিশন অফ সল্ট ট্যাক্স, এগুলো ছিল ওদের ইকোনমিক রিফর্মস। আর অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেটিভ ডিমান্ডস কি কি ছিল? রিপেল অফ আর্মস অ্যাক্ট অ্যান্ড লাইসেন্স অ্যাক্ট, demand for Indianization of services through simultaneous Indian civil service examination in England and India, complete separation of executive and judiciary, improvement of police system to make it honest, efficient, and popular. তারপর wider employment of Indians in higher grades of administrative services, spread of primary education among the masses. এইগুলো ছিল demands of the early nationalists: constitutional reforms, economic reforms and administrative reforms. এবার methods of the early nationalists কি কি? Prayers, 3 P's. They made use of 3 P's: petition, prayer, protest. Deputation of Indian leaders was sent to Britain. যেমন দাদাভাই নওরোজি spent a major part of his life in Britain to create awareness among the British people and politicians about the plight of Indians. They did not want to arouse serious opposition. Their main objective was to educate people in India in modern politics. They held meetings where speeches were made, resolutions for popular demands were passed. They made use of press to criticize the government policies. They sent memorandums and petitions to the government officials and British Parliament. These petitions were carefully drafted with facts and arguments. Though these petitions were addressed to the government, their real aim was to educate the Indian people. The early nationalists followed constitutional agitation method. এটা হচ্ছে methods of early nationalists. এবার achievements of early nationalists কি কি? ওই appointment of Public Service Commission in 1886, a resolution of the House of Commons for simultaneous examination for ICS in London and India, appointment of Welby Commission on Indian expenditure, the Indian Council Act of 1892. Early nationalists created national awakening among people and they belonged to one common country, India. This made the Indians conscious of the. The early nationalists trained people in politics. The early nationalists did pioneering work by exposing the true nature of the British. এগুলো ছিল by doing so they weakened the foundation of British rule in India. About criticism of the early nationalists কি কি ছিল? They failed to realize that British and Indian interests clashed with each other. British was using Indian resources to increase its wealth. এটা ওরা বুঝতে ভুল করেছিল. Methods used by nationalists were criticized inadequate. They depended on generosity of British instead of relying on their own strength and challenging the imperialist might. Imperialist might কে ওরা চ্যালেঞ্জ করেনি. They depended on the generosity of the British. The early nationalists failed to draw the masses into mainstream of national movement. Their area of influence was limited to urban educated Indians. Failed to draw the masses into the mainstream of the national movement. ওদের area of influence ছিল limited to urban educated Indians. এবার official attitude towards the Congress. নেক্সট, এটা দরকার নেই। এবার দাদাভাই নওরোজি, সুরেন্দ্রনাথ ব্যানার্জি, গোপাল কৃষ্ণ গোখলে। Dadabhai Naoroji, popularly known as Grand Old Man of India, was born in a Parsi family, worked as a professor of mathematics in Elphinstone College at Mumbai for 10 years. He was elected. He founded the Bombay Association and edited the newspaper Rast Goftar. Rast Goftar mane Speaker of Truth. He edited the newspaper. Dadabhai Naoroji edited the newspaper RAST, Rast Goftar, GOFTAR, Goftar. এটার মানে হচ্ছে স্পিকার অফ ট্রুথ। He started a magazine, Dharma Marg Darshak. Dharma Marg Darshak. He started movements against the Vernacular Press Act and atrocious treatment of poor peasants by zamindars. About his contributions. Dadabhai Naoroji is in India's unofficial ambassador. During his stay in England, Dadabhai was looked down upon India's unofficial ambassador, fighting for the cause of his country. In 1865, he founded the London Indian Society in collaboration with W.C. Banerjee. Dadabhai Naoroji was the India's unofficial ambassador. During his stay in England, Dadabhai Naoroji was looked down upon as India's unofficial ambassador fighting for the cause of his country. In 1865, he founded the London Indian Society in collaboration with W.C. Banerjee. He was the first Indian to become the member of British House of Commons in England. He was the first Indian to become the member of British House of Commons in England. It was due to his efforts that in 1893 the House of Commons passed a resolution in favor of holding imperial civil service examination in England and India. In 1866, he founded the East Indian Association in London. Dadabhai's role in Congress was praiseworthy. He took an active part in the foundation of Indian National Congress. Resolutions on self-government, boycotts, Swadeshi and national education was passed by the Congress under his presidency. As an economic thinker, he came to the conclusion that the root cause for economic ills of India was exploitation of the British. Dadabhai's views on Indian economy was given in his work entitled Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. His famous drain theory explained how India's wealth was being drained to England through various ways. তাহলে দাদাভাই নওরোজির কন্ট্রিবিউশন কি কি ছিল? He was the India's unofficial ambassador. Dadabhai's role in Congress was praiseworthy. He took active part in the foundation of Indian National Congress and was elected its president thrice. Dadabhai's role in Congress was praiseworthy. He took an active part in the foundation of Indian National Congress and was elected as its president thrice. As an economic thinker, he came to the conclusion that root cause for economic ills of India was exploitation of India by the British. Dadabhai's views on India's economy was given in his work entitled Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. His famous drain theory explained how India's wealth was being drained to England. এবার দাদাভাই নওরোজি সুরেন্দ্রনাথ ব্যানার্জি Surendranath Banerjee was a nationalist leader, popular journalist, and dedicated educationist. He qualified for Indian Civil Service examination and was posted in Bangladesh. He was soon dismissed because he opposed the policy of racial discrimination followed by the British. Surendranath Banerjee began his career as a professor of English at the Metropolitan College. He set up his own school, which later developed into Ripon College. Surendranath Banerjee was elected to both Bengal and Imperial Legislative Council. He was elected to Calcutta Corporation and remained its member for nearly 2 decades. He advocated the use of constitutional methods for the attainment of India's goals. About his contributions, Surendranath Banerjee's contributions. Established the Indian Association to fight against the wrong policies of the British. He founded the Indian Association in 1876. Its aim, Indian Association founded the Indian Association. Its aims were to educate the people, to create public opinion in the country, and to arouse political consciousness and unity. To fight against the wrong policies of the British. Aims were to educate the people, to create strong public opinion in the country, and to arouse political consciousness and unity. Surendranath Banerjee's Indian National Conference marched with Indian National Congress. He presided over two sessions of the Congress. Surendranath Banerjee presided over two sessions of the Congress. Surendranath Banerjee edited a newspaper Bengali which served as a powerful medium for mobilizing public opinion. His book, A Nation in Making, Surendranath Banerjee's book, A Nation in the Making, A Nation in the Making gives an account of his political concern, his views about self-government. Surendranath Banerjee started agitation against the License Act, Arms Act, Vernacular Press Act, and against lowering the age from 21 to 19 years to appear in ICS examination. Surendranath Banerjee started agitation against the License Act, Arms Act, Vernacular Press Act, and against lowering the age from 21 to 19 years to appear in the ICS examination. He opposed the Minto Morley reforms of 1909. He also opposed the division of Bengal by Lord Curzon in 1909. Third one is Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Opposed the division of Bengal, partition of Bengal by Lord Curzon. Surendranath Banerjee opposed the partition of Bengal by Lord Curzon in 1909. Ebal Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Gopal Krishna Gokhale was born at Kolhapur in Maharashtra. He was a professor of history and economics at Fergusson College, Pune. He was influenced by the ideas of Justice M.G. Ranade. He joined the Deccan Education Society founded by Justice Ranade. Gopal Krishna Gokhale joined the Deccan Education Society founded by Justice Ranade. He was awarded the title Companion of Indian Empire. A Gopal Krishna Gokhale was awarded the title CIE, mane Companion of Indian Empire. Gokhale became the most popular leader of Indian National Congress. He presided over Varanasi session of the Congress in 1905. Gokhale এবার ওর contributions কি Gokhale set up the Servants of Indian Society in 1905. Some of the main members of the Servants of Indian Society was Srinivas Shastri and Hridayanath Kunzru. Gopal Krishna Gokhale played an important role in the passage of Minto Morley reforms. Gopal Krishna Gokhale served as a member of Indian Public Service Commission. During Gokhale's visit to England, he tried to persuade the British statesmen not to give effect of partition of Bengal. Gokhale favored the use of constitutional means to achieve his goals. Achieve his aims. He opposed the policy of British government whenever necessary, criticized the government on issues such as incurring huge expenditure on British army, এত টাকা খরচ করা British army-তে, adopting policy of racial discrimination in appointments to higher posts and imposing production tax on cotton. He made a strong plea for the reform of the Legislative Council and separating of judiciary from executive. ও খুব প্লিড করতে লাগলো to separate judiciary from executive.